And yes, so because 99.9% of everything that Estonia is, outside the human beings, is digital. And so the country operates fully on the digital platform, meaning that it could operate anywhere. It's cloud-based. And so Estonia, all Estonian government digital infrastructure, all the data, all of it is mirrored in, there are probably more, but officially there is one site.
Yes. I still need to learn how to say what's up in Estonian. I'm going to learn that today. But welcome to day 2. We're in Estonia. Day 2, the B2B meetings begin. In case you're wondering why we're in Estonia, it's to do a couple of things. First of all, check that out, man. We're here to do a couple of things. Day 2 kicks off today. I'm going to walk you through the whole journey. It's going to be exciting. It's snowing, it's freezing. We're in the hotel, thank God. So today we're going to be indoors a lot of the time, having the B2B meetings with government officials, private sector. The coming together begins today. Excited. Keep you guys posted.
CTA with Honorable Kadri, video 2.
The tagline on CTA is that you never truly know people until you take the time out to get to know people. We're having a conversation with Honorable Kadri Humal Ayal, who is Honorable Consul. I made a mistake, and if I say consulate, I take it back. Honorable Consul of Estonia in Kenya. And we're going to be explaining all this jargon and what it means so that you can understand then what is the role of that? What's the role? Why haven't you said ambassador? What's the role of all of these different things? So, but what we're doing is taking it progression, step by step, so that you watching can understand not just a person speaking, but also where they come from. And also so that we can understand, okay, can we bring these things back home? Already we are saying we're very alike. And I'm aware that this has not just been watched by Kenyans, but also by Africans and people from across the world. Some of the excuses that we give is about being colonized. You are multi-colonized. So automatically there is similarities within Estonia, Africa, Kenya. Now where we are in this story, you're explaining about Russia's assimilation into Estonia by force. You get, by force. This is not optional. One of the most powerful things that you've just made me understand is the power of language. The secret source of Estonia. The secret whisper.
Yes.
So paint me more context of growing up now. Now that I've understood your background, tell me now about your family. What kind of values have been instilled in this? What's happening to you? What's been formed into Kadri before she was honorable?
So I think a couple of times I already sort of brought that aspect of there was limited freedoms. And so there was KGB that was watching over.
Wow.
There was basically, you just knew that anybody could hear anything. And so so a lot of sort of part of the mindset growing up was you have to watch what you say.
Wow.
And more so than speaking of the family I grew up in, where my grandmother's sister during Second World War left Estonia, took a small boat across the Baltic Sea as refugees. It was her husband, and her 3 young children who...
But just for clarity, when you say boats, you're not talking about the boat we went on.
No, I'm not talking of a cruise ship. I'm not talking of a ferry. I'm talking of a small boat that maybe would be able to hold maybe 10 to 15 people.
Wow.
And it's a rowboat. It just needs to go across the Baltic Sea for them to escape the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Why? Because both her and her husband were two prominent of people in Estonia during the Estonian Republic for them to survive Soviet occupation.
Wow.
They knew that if they stay,
They'll be killed.
no, they'll be sent to Siberia.
Oh, the concentration camps.
The concentration camps in Siberia.
So the Germans had their concentration camp. I've forgotten what it's called.
Yes, and that was specifically for Jews.
Yes, for the Jews. The Russians had Siberia, and Siberia was famous of sending...
Basically anybody. So we have a word for it in Estonian language. It's called küüditamine, which is basically middle of the night, suddenly your door is knocked, everybody out into large cattle, trains, and they are taken into Siberia.
This template is the same, Kadri. I mean, even the British did that to the Mau Mau.
Yeah.
On a level. You get what I
Yes.
mean? This template is the same. We are more similar than we are apart. And I love that you're painting this for us to understand. Sometimes we see whites and we use the word West, not understanding that Europe is a continent with very different experiences. Not everybody was a colonizer. Some whites were being colonized.
Yes, absolutely. And so I had my great aunt who lived in the States. And so that already brought some tension, so to say, probably in the background, because we had deserters in our family, viewed by the Soviet Union as such, or actually intellectuals who saw that their mindset is not compatible with Soviet Union, and so they would better leave.
Oh.
Because everything was viewed from two side points. Soviet Union saw them as, they deserted and they left. And we knew they left because Soviet Union was just not in line with what they could stand for.
Wow.
So...
And how do other Estonians look at you? Or they understood?
So, very many families. So basically, every Estonian family had either people who were sent to Siberia or people who left.
I get it.
It was either one.
Wow.
And basically, if you were wealthy during Estonian Republic, you stood no chance of keeping anything during Soviet time. Everything that you owned was taken by the Soviet Union, and it was now state-owned, because during Soviet Union period, a private person owned nothing. Your lands, your factories, your businesses, your department stores, everything was taken.
What would make people stay? I mean, this is hell.
Yes, but this is your country, and you know you're going to be free again. Because when all that happened, one of the things that Estonia did to maintain its republic was Estonian embassy in USA was accredited to act as the country while the country was occupied.
Wow.
So, Estonia as a republic continued just outside the land of Estonia. And so the embassy continued to operate as the country.
Okay, stop there. That is just incredible, especially in context with this. Estonia, now let's bring in the digital infrastructure. Estonia is the only country on this earth, if I'm not wrong, with a digital embassy.
Yes, data embassies.
Data embassies. Yes. Data embassies. Correct me. Anytime I make mistakes, feel free to correct me, Kadri. Just using my muscle memory and experience. And this is the reason why. Because of how much Estonia has digitized, because of how much Estonia has trauma and history from all the colonization that's happening, because of how much Estonia operates on digital infrastructure, they have cloned themselves, data embassy, that in case there's ever an attack, the country can still operate.
Correct. And yes, so because 99.9% of everything that Estonia is, outside the human beings, is digital. And so the country operates fully on the digital platform, meaning that it could operate anywhere. It's cloud-based. And so Estonia, all Estonian government digital infrastructure, all the data, all of it is mirrored in, there are probably more, but officially there is one site.
Yes.
Outside Estonia, so that indeed, should anything happen on Estonian soil itself,
The country can operate.
Country can still recognize its citizens, country can still offer services to its citizens, and so it's able to carry on.
And when you say anything and everything, just to paint context, more than the last elections, you literally came to my office in Kinderuma, I think, at the time, and you voted.
Yeah.
You voted.
That was about 10 years back.
It was yes. Like I'm trying to paint context. So let's forget about this from an attack perspective. Imagine how much of Estonian day-to-day life is digital.
This was introduced in 2002. Back then, when it was introduced, it was made mandatory. So everybody had to get one. And at first, people were not pleased because by 2002, we had just been writing the laws and building the legislative framework, so there weren't even any services connected to this card. So there is a joke amongst Estonians that this used to be just a great way to scrape ice off the windshield in the winter, but there was not much use for it in the beginning. And this is where banks come into play, that I mentioned in the beginning. So the Nordic banks that actually had entered the Estonian market, back in 2002, the state just communicated with them that, by the way, we have this way of identifying yourself safely. Maybe you would like to introduce this to your clients as well when they're using online banking. Because back then the banks were using these plastic cards that had many codes on them, and then you had to renew the card, and then you would get your just different sets of codes that would be unique to you, but it was quite annoying. So the banks actually integrated this ID card to their services and started handing out free ID card readers for the people. And then this card, for the first time, had a meaning. Now it's a way to actually access your daily finances. And that was a great push to popularize this card. And that was one of the first services that was connected to this. Nowadays, it has a lot of uses that I'm going to show you on the next slide. But it has so many uses now that more than half of the people are using the physical card regularly. I am using the physical card almost daily. It is a way to get my e-prescriptions. They're on this card. It is a way for me to vote. It is thanks to this card. It is a great tool, an access point.
And we're going to get that. I just needed to tease that because you've said the country then operated during this time, before it's gone digital.
Yes, before it's gone digital, because the country gave the mandate to the ambassador, and I think at that point in time there was also probably the Minister of Foreign Affairs or somebody else was in the States at that particular moment when the occupation of Estonia occurred. And so Estonia was occupied by the Soviet Union from the end of World War II until 1991, when we regained our independence. And all this period of time, we knew we were a republic just under occupation currently, and we knew we were going to be independent again.
That's what's blowing my mind. You knew.
We knew.
Who was doing the fighting? The fighting was being done
internally.
Internally,
it was. So number one, it was the stories of the previous republic. the stories of how we lived, the stories of who we were, the stories of, what was Estonia as a country, what were our strengths, how did we stand in the rest of the European continent, how we interacted with our neighbors. All of that was the stories that, number one, were not safe to tell, but number two, were stories that were being told.
Wow.
And so, for example, one of the things that would certainly land you
In the secret whisper.
yes, in the secret whisper. And so one of the things that would certainly land you into Siberia was if you owned an Estonian flag.
What?
And so families hid into their attics, into, places where if your house was ever raided, nobody would find that you own an Estonian flag. And so every now and then people would say, but do you want to come and see? Do you want to come and touch? We have the Estonian flag.
No way.
So
in your family, is history being passed down through storytelling?
yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because, for example, my mother tells the stories of how she learned German language by listening to the German army marching up and down the street she grew up in. How she was taking some food to those who were imprisoned by the Germans or the Russians at that point in time. My grandmother and the stories of how the young university students during the Estonian Republic were the leading force in creating new dimensions in understanding art and the liberties of thinking freely. And so there are the stories, there are the photos from that time, and then of course by the time it was possible to start exchanging letters between my grandmother and her sister, who was living in the States, because initially when they left,
No
it
communication.
was not safe. And then they had developed some code words with which they were able to ask, are you okay? Do you have food?
Was the poverty level, was there poverty? Because I need to use this word, and it's going to sound vulgar, but it's the truth. Russia was literally raping Estonia. By that I mean extracting everything and even just sending it back. Taking out everything from Estonia and taking it to their own country. If you don't own anything of your lands, if you don't own any of your businesses, if you don't own any of your land, they are using it to enrich themselves.
Yes, that's correct. And so, yes, there was poverty. Yes, there was lack of food in the shops. And there was, of course, lack of variety of food to start with. And so, and Estonia is a very rich, very hardworking country. And so we produced 3 times of what we ourselves needed for milk production, for example. All that was taken to Russia. It was, and not only that, Russians brought in their people. And so that's why Estonia right now has the highest number of what is considered refugees. Because they are Russian-speaking people who were brought into Estonia by the Soviet Union to work in particular leading positions, to work in some of the industries, etc. And when Estonia regained independence, they decided not to go back to Russia, but they also decided not to learn Estonian language.
Wow.
And so we have a huge population that are not Estonian citizens. They have a non-citizen document that simply says they reside in Estonia, do not hold Estonian citizenship, do not hold Russian citizenship. They simply chose to stay in Estonia and not to be part of the growth and building up Estonia.
But what happens when those guys get kids? Because those kids are
In Estonia, you're not given citizenship by the fact that you're born in Estonia.
what?
You have to speak Estonian language at a level that is, I think it's
A1.
Yes. And so if you don't speak Estonian language at that level, you do not get Estonian citizenship.
This is so deep. Like, I mean, this is brilliant in terms of breaking down the understanding. The history is so important for people to understand. So Russian sends guys, and these guys suddenly have jobs, probably even have stolen things that are not theirs. But when independence comes, they still stay. Estonia now has been given back its independence. However, these guys decide to stay. Estonians are like, listen, we're not giving you citizenship, we're giving you none.
No, first and foremost, please go back to Russia.
Wow.
First and foremost.
But these guys are like, I don't know Russia.
No, that's not correct.
They've been there 20 years.
Well, they were brought in, let's say 1945.
Yes.
It's 1991 that we're telling them to leave.
Yes.
It's not generations.
Oh my, this sounds like so. I lived in South Africa, so I sort of understand like when the independence happened and the Boers are being told to go back. In an essence, I hear what you're saying, but I also be like I've been lived here 45 years, or even whatever. Or my kids are here, and I like this place. I don't like anyway. I understand the complexity. Let me not even get deeper into this, but it is such a complex mix. From this side, and I completely understand your side. Yeah. Finally, we're free. We can get back ours.
Yeah.
And again, we are more similar than we are different. It's a Mau Mau, and it's a British.
Yes.
Give us back ours.
Exactly. And so then when Estonia regained independence, yes, there was the whole process of privatization, because everything that had been taken by the state, if that house belonged to your family in Estonian Republic time, and right now it houses, I don't know, some government office or whatever it is, you bring the proof that this land, this house, my family owned it. It needs to be now privatized back to you because it belonged to your family.
But thank God you had the history of documentation.
Yes.
For that. And also, the leadership that came in was very intentional about returning to the rightful owner that which had been taken.
Yes.
Looks at the Kenyan first government and what they did. So I'm understanding some of the places where Kenya and Estonia went different ways.
Yeah.
But you've talked about then an Estonia with a population of 1.3 million. So you're saying from that 1.3 million, like 300,000 are then Russians or...
Roughly. Yeah. And so they were given the choice, of course, learn Estonian language, get citizenship, or don't learn Estonian language and have no citizenship.
Oh, okay.
But they chose not to.
I get it. Wow.
But then, so under Soviet time, and you see, this is where, so my father was already at that time an inventor. And because of that, so there were sort of like, so one, there was, the family that is in US. There was second, so my father was considered, you could sort of call it like a state asset because of the inventions that he did.
Wow.
And so there were places he would be monitored because of that.
Oh. Okay. So your father was a prominent figure, is a prominent figure in Estonia.
Yes.
His name being, the family name being Humal.
Yes.
So Humal is a known name.
Yes, it is.
In Tartu or in Estonia?
In Estonia in general, because it's my grandfather who who was teaching at Tallinn Technical University where basically anybody who went through that specific university would know my grandfather.
Okay.
Then those who were now in Tartu University, if they were studying things to do with physics, biophysics, some aspects of medicine, etc., they would know my father.
Okay.
and so then there were those who also knew that my aunt is the sister of my father, and because my aunt is also somebody who is known in because she established the laboratory of family studies, and so also she is very well known. In fact, right now she's 90. I think she's 91. Yeah, she's just turning 91. She was just named the thought leader of Estonian public media.
Wow.
Because of her contributions to using statistics to explain many of the phenomena in terms of the population, in terms of the country, in terms of how that impacts economics.
But the data, for me, it's the data. You see, you have this data to be able to then, some of these careers existed back then because of the data, the archiving of data that she's able then to now help or use to bring about positive.
Well, and you see, this is where, when you say that, history informs so much of it. So Estonia has done enumeration for over 100 years.
What does that mean?
So carrying out the census, basically.
Yes.
Basically being able to, and so